All right. And we are live. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our October movie club. I had to do a double check there to make sure that I did write the correct month because I've made that mistake before. Um, this month we watched House or Hausu, which will actually get you to the movie faster on Google if you are trying to Google it. Because if you type in House, you will just get the medical drama starring Hugh Laurie. Um, but this is not that. This is a 1977 Japanese horror comedy fantasy movie by Nobuhiko Obayashi, which he directed and produced and kind of did the story by. We'll get into that in a little bit. Before we get started on our actual discussion, I am going to go over our standard housekeeping. So this is our movie club, which is one of 3 media clubs we have at Dragonfly. This is actually a 3-club month. So we have our normal monthly media clubs, our music and movie club, and our book club is meeting this month as well. So pretty busy end of the month here for us, but really excited to have these discussions. We usually have our book club every 3 months. So our music pick in Rainbows by Radiohead is going to be on Monday night, which I believe is the 27th at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard. And our book club pick, Love in the Time of Cholera, is going to be on Wednesday the 30th. And then I will be announcing our new picks. Actually, not really. I will be announcing our new book club pick on the 1st. And our new music and movie picks, I believe, are going to be done by Beckett this month. But they'll still be on the guides tab, as well as all of our previous picks. So you can go find them there if you can't find them in our Facebook group page, which if you aren't a member of, you should be, because we do a lot of really cool stuff over there. If you want to find out what our next picks are, if you'd like to join us on video on these calls, if you'd like to maybe give me a suggestion for what to read or watch or listen to next, you can do that all in our Facebook group. It's free and we do a lot of really cool things. I'd highly suggest joining our Saturday morning coffee and creatives call, where we talk about problems that plague creative life and try to come up with solutions to them, and usually get derailed. And we talk about something else that is creatively related, but not quite on the topic we set out, which is fine. It's always a good time. It's very casual, and it's kind of a nice break for my chaotic weeks. But speaking of our new club picks, and specifically our book club, I have the poll up for our next book club pick. I will be taking it down on the 30th, so you should get your votes in for that. It's our Q4 pick, which runs from November until the end of January so that we can get around those hectic holidays. And it's always going to be a self-help and creative process book. So go find that poll on there, put in your votes. I'll send out an everyone tag, so that reminds people a little bit more to put in their votes before the end. We have had quite a few votes on it. And let me know if you'd like to read it and join us on the call for that. And if you'd like what we do and you want to support us, we do have a Patreon where you can support us for as little as $2 a month. There is nothing behind that paywall. Everything we do is open to all of our members. We are working on changing that, but for now, we appreciate any support you can provide us there to help us keep things moving on this side. So with all of that aside, I would like to thank you guys for joining me and watching House, which is a movie that I greatly love. And I forced upon you all, despite my firm belief that it is a movie that is better appreciated if you randomly come across it with little or no context going into it. I do have like a brief history of it. I've been trying to incorporate like a synopsis history into it, but I think because I said it the way I said it, I think I do want to ask the question, my normal first questions mixed in, because despite picking it and thinking of picking it for a while, I don't know who I would recommend it to. And I have a lot of art house people in my life. So I guess what I want to know is, had you seen this movie before? Did you like it? And would you recommend it to anyone?
I have not seen it before this watch. And in fact, I'd never even heard of it before. And so I went in completely blind Would I say that I liked it? I enjoyed it. Um, but I like weird stuff. Um, would I recommend it to anybody? Maybe to very specific people. I feel like we have a mutual friend that I think would like this movie if she hasn't watched it already, Jordan.
Mhm.
But maybe other than that, I don't know.
Yeah, I have seen this movie before. Since I used to have Netflix DVD, um, I I'm able to like search my emails to find out when I rented it, and it was in 2011 that I saw this movie, and I do like it. It's difficult. Hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's difficult to like come up with. Well, yeah, it's a bit hard to like. I don't know, make sense of this movie in general. So even though I don't quite understand what's going on a moment by moment basis, I do find it very entertaining, and it's like it keeps one upping itself in terms of like absurdity and surprising things happening, which is sort of an incredible feat in and of itself. But in terms of recommending it to people, I think it would take. I would definitely not recommend it to like just a random group of people who I don't know. But if I know someone on a deep level, then maybe I would recommend it to that person.
Yeah, I will say I loved a lot of the like imagery and the moments like the film itself, and I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit. I got a little bit like hyper focused or like fixated on it after I watched it, and I dove into all the YouTube commentary on it. I probably didn't watch all of it, but I watched a bit. And so that kind of helped me make sense a little bit more of what I had watched.
I'm really happy to hear that Derek watched this in 2011 because when I was looking up like a lot about this movie, it came out in 1977 and it was very negatively reviewed by critics in Japan and not really reviewed or looked at all outside of Japan, but it was a box office hit. People loved this movie, especially like the young crowd. It was considered commercially successful. It was actually viewed as a double feature along with a romance movie that I don't remember the name of and also doesn't have any links. So only one of them survived the test of time. But it was picked up by Janus Films and redistributed in 2010 and actually shown at the Cannes Festival, and that like renewed an interest in it. And it was the first time it came to U.S. theaters. So 2010 is really when it got like kind of this cult following outside of Japan. So it's really interesting to me that Derek was right on top of that. Derek was like,
Yeah, so the DVD that I rented was probably the Criterion release that has like the crazy cat image on it.
hold on,
So
this one.
yeah, that one. So and Janus Films, I believe, either owns Criterion or is like a sister company of Criterion. So Janus releasing it in Cannes and maybe some theaters fits with the Criterion release itself.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me.
And I was also gonna say, I think I can't quite remember what my knowledge of this movie going into it was in 2011. I do remember that it already had a reputation of being crazy and just being. I think people were. Well, I think I watched a bunch of animated GIFs of it and like memes of like the cat painting, vomiting blood, and maybe a few other crazy things that happen. Oh yeah, there's this ghost cat thing. But yeah, it already had a reputation. When I'm saying already, I mean 2011, not way back in 1977. But yeah, in 2011, it already had like this reputation of just being crazy, and people were kind of looking at it as, in a way, like a crazy Japanese thing. I don't know, like the way that anime is sometimes crazy.
Yeah.
People were
It
kind of looking
definitely.
at that.
I think I would recommend this to friends of mine that I know are into like cult films as opposed to like art house film.
I think that's fair. um, so this movie is so interesting to me because it's Obayashi's first feature. And I mean that for like writing or directing, not, yeah, first feature. Prior to this, he did like experimental short films, of which I watched a couple, including the only other one that he directed, wrote, and like did all the work for. Usually he was just directing. He was actually, despite the fact that he like made his own experimental film group that actually included a lot of influential like names in like the Japanese art scene at the time, he made most of his money by directing Japanese commercials, which are just inherently weird. I'm not gonna lie. I wish that more commercials were like Japanese commercials. They go all out. But it's funny that you bring up anime because he was actually approached by Toho Studios, which is very common studio in like the anime world. I know them mostly from anime. I don't know any of the work that they've really done outside of it, to be completely honest. Um, and they asked him to make a movie that was similar to Jaws. And he developed the ideas for this script, and along with his 10-year-old daughter, who came up with most of it, and I think is actually listed as like one of the writers on it. And it was written by Chiho Katsura, who, in my brief research, seems to have written a lot of kind of erotic slashers and porn movies, which have a lot of questionable names I can't say on here, but I did like that one of them was titled Lusty Transparent Girl. So
Yeah, I watched the Criterion interview with him about the movie. And yeah, it was fascinating that like first off, I guess Toho Studios back then was considered to be like akin to like a Paramount or something, like very big in Japan. And so them approaching him to direct well, they didn't approach him to direct. They
No.
approached him to create, a screenplay for a film. And they wanted to release something that could compete with Jaws. But they wanted it to be like an auteur film, but they also wanted a well-known director to do it. So they didn't want him to in the beginning. But he came back with this script, and none of the Toho directors wanted to do it. Like none of them. So they were like, all right, well, he's our auteur, so I guess he could do it.
It took him 2 years to convince them.
Yeah, and he did a bunch of marketing in the meantime too. I read the manga, the one shot that he made to go with it. It is the same, but like just very pared down. Yeah, it's wild.
Just including, like Jaws. Yeah, just like Jaws. Including just this being Obayashi's first feature, a lot of the actresses in the movie are models that were on his
in his
commercial suits. Yeah. Except for Gorgeous and then Gorgeous's stepmom, who were both established actresses. And Mr. Togo is actually a singer who was friends with him. And outside of that, all of the other side characters are like crew, friends, and family.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't it the auntie was played by a pretty well-known Japanese actress though at the time?
So no, not her.
Yeah, I thought she was. That's what I had read.
I do know Gorgeous and the stepmom were Um, It's hard for me to find anything on this.
Yeah, I don't know any of the cast's like actual names.
Yeah. So she did a lot of like stage plays at the time and didn't like being seen as an older character in it, was the auntie's
Right. Yeah.
whole thing.
I remember that being brought up in some of the commentary videos where like it's very one thing that I do very much appreciate about this movie is that it's very meta in a lot of ways. And one of which being like a commentary on performance and acting and movies on the whole and how they treat women, where we have this older woman, and warning in case you're watching and you didn't know, this will contain spoilers. So spoilers ahead. If you don't want to get spoiled, then don't, go watch the movie and then come back. But she, like an older woman who devours these young girls to kind of like rejuvenate herself with their essence. So it's like, that's kind of what the film industry does, and, spits you out. And then when you're no longer useful as a woman or too old or whatever, then they're done with you.
I also get the vibes that this does have a lot to do with his daughter as well, seeing as she like did a part of the story, and this includes a lot of her own nightmares. And I think he went into this with like no storyboard. However, before he did it, he did have like the manga. He also had a radio drama that was actually pretty successful, which allowed them to greenlight this. So
I'm like, how do you make this a radio drama? This movie is so based on the visuals. Like,
I have no idea.
Yeah, not sure. I will say also in terms of inspiration, one thing I was surprised by when I watched this other special feature that's on the Criterion channel right now. It's about one of the director's inspirations for this movie was the atomic bomb, specifically the one dropped on Hiroshima, because he was born in Hiroshima Prefecture in 1938 or somewhere around there. And he said that he lost some of his friends in the bomb blast.
Yeah,
so
he said, I heard him say all of his childhood friends.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, and so it's pretty crazy that a movie with this tone would be inspired by the atomic bomb. It's almost as crazy as hearing that the studio execs wanted a Jaws type of movie.
Well, I mean, you can see the teeth of the cat right there, Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the atomic bomb blast is actually shown in the movie, but it's only 2 seconds long, and it's where the girls are on their bus trip, I think.
Yeah. I think it's right before the bus trip. It's during that weird 70s song cycle.
I love that scene. I would say that's probably my favorite scene in the movie, is when they're on their way over there and they're kind of like meta watching this flashback of the aunt and her love that got lost in the war.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like they have what looks like old footage, but then the girls are sometimes in the footage with the historical people.
And commentating on it, and kind of like they're watching it with us. I loved that scene. And also the background when they're talking to each other on the bus, and it's like this bright colored, like just abstract painting. Like, I don't know. It's very striking. I love the visuals in this movie a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was also going to say, like the bus trip with the cartoon background reminded me a lot about Barbie recently.
So I could see that.
If there was inspiration there.
I could see that. This movie is very visually interesting, and I mean, he lives up to his experimental. I feel like a lot of this movie was weird and awkward and didn't quite fit together just so that other movies could pull it apart. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's a lot of what Obayashi does. I get the feeling from this that he doesn't care about your opinions on his movies whatsoever. He's just having fun with a camera.
Yeah. Well, he said as much. Like in the interview on the Criterion Channel, he said that he had like seasoned crew members who were working on the film who had forgotten what it felt like to have fun making movies. And like that's the whole reason why you get into it, because for them it had just become a job. And so everybody was just hanging around having a good time.
I will say, having watched some of his shorts that he did before this, especially Complex, which is the other one that he was like all of the things on, as well as a couple of his commercials, his use of jump cuts is like very apparent in all of his work and very, very interesting to me. It like plays with the sense of time. There are parts of this movie where it feels like the frame rate on the cameras was set wrong, and he was like, "Ah, we'll just go with it."
Yeah, that was definitely intentional in the staircase scene when they make the phone call.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't like it. It made me uncomfortable, but that was probably the point.
I personally really like at the very start where it's all the girls talking, and every single time somebody talks, it does a jump cut between them, and it's not exactly in order of where they are, so you have no frame of reference to like who's sitting next to each other at any point in time.
Yeah, I had no idea who was who at first.
And despite that, they all just have like one single stereotypical role.
Yeah, I was also gonna say like one quote that stood out to me from the interview with the director is also that he said he thought about what Kurosawa or Ozu would do, and then try to do the opposite. So yeah, it was that was pretty much his goal, and yeah, I would say he pretty much succeeded, and still made an entertaining movie out of it.
Do you think the movie would have like the same effect if it was edited differently?
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, this goes down the dangerous train of like asking what camp is kind of thing, but we'll ignore that question for now.
I don't know that in that sense. I mean, the editing, you know, and this is just my own conjecture, feels like it's more of a stylistic choice than anything. Like it doesn't necessarily make a difference to the presentation of the movie as much. I think the jump cuts are definitely, you know, characteristic. But it's like the visuals and the story are so off the wall in the first place. Like the editing just kind of like is another element to that. In my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not sure with the editing specifically if doing it more well, I would say the basic answer to the question is no, it would not have quite the same effect because like you, I did notice like on the bench scene, I also thought that was very cool how it was like switching the order of the characters by jump cutting at weird times. And there's also a shot, well, I don't know if this counts as editing. It kind of does, but where Gorgeous is deciding to, it's near the beginning when they're all at the school and the professor comes by and says they can't go on the field trip to wherever. And Gorgeous is kind of standing by the side and there's like an iris in where like the screen becomes black except for a circle around her because she's deciding that she wants to take them to her aunt's house or whatever. And so choices like that just stand out because of how unique they are and like so yeah, I think it would not have the same effect if it was like more conventional.
I guess I was more drawn by the like set decorating and costume design and like just all the overall visuals of everything else that was going on more than things like that. Because yeah, I remember the iris effect. It didn't stick with me as much as like the sunset behind the apartment, like just, those little things. I think those are what really makes this movie special.
I do really like the weird camera effects and the way it moves into characters and like fades between two things so that they become one thing at a specific time kind of deal. I know that Beckett already told us what her favorite scene was. Do you have a favorite scene, Derek?
Hmm. I gotta say, like the early musical scene with the song "Cherries Were Made for Eating," where it's like showing a bunch of townspeople kind of dancing in synchronicity, and there's like a guy hammering a shoe with a child next to him who's also doing something with the shoe, and then the camera moves up. But the thing is that I still remembered the lyrics to that song, even though it's been 14 years, I guess. So I would say that scene must have had a big impact on my memory. And it's also crazy how that guy like falls down the stairs and into a bucket, and then the bucket
Just goes around a car at some point.
yeah, like a cartoon character.
Yeah, I want to live in
Then
whatever world Mr. Togo lives in because like he gets stuck behind like a band van and then just like goes to eat ramen with a guy at one point.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's so I would say that scene. And in terms of like scenes when they get to the house, um it's harder to pick. It all becomes this jumble of images, I think. So it's harder to pick. I do like the scene where the cat is playing the piano, and it like the film goes forward, then reverses, then goes forward again while the cat is meowing and playing the piano. Um, so yeah, I would say that one once it gets to the house, but otherwise the musical "Cherries Were Made for Eating" scene.
I think that's fair. I think it's cute that you guys both like picked these very, very happy scenes.
Well, and I was thinking if I had to choose like a favorite scene in the house, probably the one where Kung Fu is fighting the sticks in the yard. I thought
Kung Fu is the best character, and I think that's something that everybody can agree on. I don't think that's up for debate.
yeah, she was great.
My favorite scene in this movie that has been weirdly influential in my own work and my own art is Melody being eaten by the piano.
It's such a weird scene.
I'm a huge fan of that one. I am also a huge fan of Gorgeous just looking in the mirror while on fire for some reason.
I liked the whole lead up to that where Gorgeous is like looking at herself as her aunt and like the reflection becoming a demon and things like that in the mirror. That was really cool. And then her in the wedding get up. That was a very striking image.
Yeah, I really like the difference in tone between like inside the house versus outside the house, where outside the house is like this kind of like 70s vibe. Like you have like silly antics going on. Even like Gorgeous's house is just like this weird window pane with just like flowy things on either side of it and just like a small yard with the greenest grass possible. Like it's such a weird fantasy. And then you go into the house and things feel a little bit more real, but also less real in the house.
Well, that is from the commentary and like interviews and stuff that I watched. That is kind of a metaphor for how the generation that was coming up at the time, or how the previous generation who went through the atomic blasts had held resentment for the newer generation because they hadn't experienced any of that, like any of the hardships of the war or the bombs or anything. And they were just like, concerned about their stupid teenage bullshit. And, they were just happy and not worried about, existential annihilation. So the contrast between the fantasy of the opening of the film versus once they're in the house and things are going haywire and people are dying and being mutilated, and so that's sort of like where the A-bomb comes in, and the generational rift between the newer generation and the ones who went through the war.
Do you think that it's like more anxious energy or more nostalgic energy in that regard?
In the opening scenes?
No, just, well, in the movie in general. Because you said that it was like a differentiation between the house, but like the vibes of the movie, do you think it's more of like nostalgia is not the right word. Do you think it's more of like a being upset that you missed out on a childhood, or are you anxious that your kids are going to
Yeah,
go through the same thing?
I think it's more of a longing and loss sense around, the losing out on childhood, because he was 7 when the bombs went off and he lost all his friends. And so I think it would be easy to completely just have to grow up immediately, going through something like that. And so, yeah, there's definitely a sense of childhood lost and innocence lost for sure.
That being said, I wouldn't say that this movie is very much leans into the childlikeness of it. And I guess you could say that like
Well,
Obayashi,
it was written by a child, basically.
yes. But even just in the way it makes the film, like the use of animation along with it, and the filmmaking styles itself, it leans more into that. Do you think that's because of like him trying to bring back his lost childhood? Do you think maybe that's the reason why he plays so much in film?
Could be.
Yeah, the tone could be, because I mean, one of the striking things about the tone is that, like for instance, even in the scene where Melody has her hands cut off, she's kind of like smiling and looking at them. Like basically, the characters, even when they're getting dismembered, don't seem to feel pain for the most part. They seem very happy, although they do get scared by the head and like by several other things. So it's like they feel emotional fear, but they don't feel bodily pain, even when they're getting chopped up. So it's kind of like this weird cartoony tone, where even though technically horrific stuff is being shown, it's all just very fun and like lighthearted in a way.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. One of the questions that I wrote down, because I've come to just like writing a bunch of questions and then trying to figure out where we are in the conversation in relation to them. How do you think this compares to like other movies that came out during the same time? Because in this time frame, we also have like Suspiria, which also is weirdly experimental filmmaking, as well as like Carrie, that is just a standard horror movie from this area. Still pretty experimental for the time frame, but a lot more horror generic than say Suspiria, which I would view as more of an arty film.
Yeah, I don't really know what else to compare this movie to. Suspiria is an interesting comparison. I think it does have a bunch of similarities in terms of like the lighting and the colors and things like that. But I can't really think of any other movie that has this tone when it comes to horror or like horrific things being shown. Because I
Yeah.
mean, these are, I'm not sure how old the girls are supposed to be, but they're
High
children
school.
basically, and they're getting dismembered.
Yeah,
So
there's
like,
some area of like high school age.
yeah, like so they're teenagers at, somewhere around there, and watching teenagers get dismembered should be pretty horrifying, but it's not in this movie. I don't quite
Yeah.
know any other movie that does it like that.
Yeah, I mean this came out around the time when like the very iconic late 70s / early 80s horror films were starting to make ground. Like I just looked it up. The Shining came out in 1980. So
One of my favorite slasher films, the start of the golden age, Black Christmas, was 1974.
yeah,
So
I would say that probably nothing else has the tone of this one.
how do you think? So I want to go back to my campiness question, because camp is something that is just so hard to define, and this movie is so campy. Um, do you think that like the campiness makes it more or less effective as a movie?
More, definitely.
Yeah, I would say more, because I mean, there are plenty of haunted house movies. There are plenty of movies where people get murdered one by one. But there's not really any movie quite like this. So it
That's not the
definitely,
right movie.
it definitely, like the campiness definitely makes this one more unique and way more memorable. So yeah, I think it makes it more effective.
Yeah, I think with the tone that this movie takes as far as like the humor and not really taking the horror aspect of it too seriously, it wouldn't have had the same effect without the camp.
Which I guess leads me into, do you think that he actually set out to like make something horror and just ended up, or do you think like, I mean, it's very clearly like a satire on horror movies that were coming out at the time, but we're not that deep into horror movies at
Yeah,
this point in time, which is interesting to me.
it's funny because he actually talked about that in the interview where he was trying to make a traditional, like his original idea was like, I want to make a very traditional Japanese horror type film. And his idea of like the way to do something new is ask a child, because children have different ideas and they think of things like random that adults would never. Like adults are so boxed in that like they can't be as creative as a child. So he asked his daughter, and he was like, what would you do if you were going to make a traditional Japanese film? And she was like, oh no, I wouldn't. Don't do that.
Sorry, I also just really like fantasy and like
Oh, she was
entire,
like, those are boring.
Fantasy's entire point of this thing was just to experience the supernatural and have nobody believe her. And I love that as her single character trait. No, she had two character traits. The other one was fantasizing about her teacher, who quite honestly doesn't need to be in this movie.
No, and is not attractive at all.
Well, you're not a schoolgirl in the 70s.
That's true. And I was trying to figure out, I was like, is this somebody that would have been considered attractive, or is that like a joke? I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like as like a preteen / young teenager, you just have a crush on a random teacher. I feel like you just kind of pick and choose. Also, he's the cool guy. He was going to take them to do some kind of training camp. It never really specifies where he was going, but they were all going to go to his sister's inn.
Yeah.
Initially, and then but it doesn't make sense as why he's coming back, and he just goes on crazy antics as almost like a break from being inside the house to remind you that this isn't actually a horror movie and that the world is ridiculous.
And then he turns into bananas.
After turning the watermelon man into a skeleton.
Yeah. Yeah, I really had no idea what was going on with that. But yeah, I think I do understand most of the plot, but that scene with the watermelon man turning into a skeleton and then the bananas. I don't know. Yeah. that
I don't know. I mean, good riddance. He seemed like a creep. He's going to take all these teenage high school girls that he teaches to his sister's inn. Okay.
It does feel like there's a joke there that we're missing.
Probably.
And I don't know if we're gonna get an answer to it.
Oh, and by the way, looking at this cat also reminds me about something else that was mentioned in the interview with the director. Is that there was a previous Japanese horror movie called Kuro Neko, which is also about a cat. And I just remembered that I watched this movie as well. I think it came out in 1966 or something. So it's black and white, and it's a much more traditional horror movie about a demonic cat. So for the earlier question about like, well, just kind of like theorizing what this movie would be like without the campiness, you could watch Kuro Neko and get some sense of that. I think it is. I enjoyed watching Kuro Neko, but I don't remember much about it at all. So that kind of tells you. I remember House way better. Just the scenes from House, not necessarily like the connective tissue or like the logical reasons for things, because there probably is no logical reason for a lot of what happens in this movie. But yeah, you could watch Kuro Neko for like House without the campiness.
I can see a lot of kind of influence between these two and looking it up briefly. That and a lot of an anime girl whose name is also Kuro Neko, but
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the word means black cat.
yeah,
So.
Yeah, that means black.
It does. Um,
And Cheryl, which is the cat's name, means white, which is why they translated to Blanche.
yeah. I am a huge fan of this movie. It is one of my favorites. So I really, really appreciate you guys watching it with me.
I did enjoy it. I love movies like The Room. I love bad movies. So, it's a fun watch. And nothing makes sense. And that's kind of the point.
It's so weird though, because this isn't a bad movie. There are so many filmmaking tricks in this that are like incredibly advanced. Sweet's death or disappearance rather, she got turned into a doll, I guess. I don't know what really happened to her. She disappeared under a bunch of mattresses, but it's filmed with a glass floor.
Yeah, that was a cool scene.
And
I mean, there are a lot of really cool filmmaking like tricks and shot framing and things like that. But one thing that I loved, like they weren't overly concerned about that, obviously. Like there's one scene where they're going into the kitchen or something, and literally you can see the grip on this, or PA or whoever it is on the side, throw the cat into the lap from off screen.
They also were not super great with their green screen and just leaned into it, which honestly appreciate.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you're gonna not go overboard on like the budgeting around the effects, then go for it. Like make it obvious then. How much was this movie made for?
So there is actually no information on the budget. I spent a while looking for the information on the budget.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that it made about $240,000 in the box office, which was a commercial success for the time. It's probably made a lot more since then. But in Japan, yeah, but in Japan it was considered, so probably less than that. I think in general, by current means, you have to make like 2 or 3 times the amount you made it in, or the amount you made it for it to be a commercial success.
Yeah. In the interview, he says that he didn't get a lot of reviews because reviewers didn't know how to review this film. They just didn't know what to say. But the ones that he got were bad. And he
Yes.
kind of wore that as a badge of honor.
Yeah, no, like I said, he did not make this movie for us.
No, he didn't
He
care.
made this movie for him.
He didn't give a crap how it was received. But the daughter says that in the interview that she would go to school and she was like the coolest kid at school because all the kids loved this movie.
I imagine that also had the effect of this is a movie that kids can watch. Like it's a horror movie that kids can watch. So I don't know if there was a lot else that they could see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. But there is, like, during this watch, I thought that like the nudity was a bit gratuitous, or like it felt a bit out of the tone of it.
I mean, by our standards, I think that's the case. Like, it's noticeable. It's kind of out of nowhere. It kind of like doesn't really do anything for the plot. But I mean, this is Japan. There's nudity in the cartoons, so I don't think it's a big. It would have been as much of a big deal, especially for like the kids or something. But yes, I mean, there is full nudity. So if you're watching and you're like, oh, I can let my kids watch, there is full nudity in this. So just be aware.
Yeah, I think it's just a difference in culture.
Yeah.
We are coming up on an hour here. Was there anything that you guys wanted to discuss in regards to the movie?
I just wanted to mention that as I was watching the interviews and stuff and listening to like how the crew had so much fun on set and things like that, we don't hear the girls' perspective. Like none of the girls, I couldn't find any commentary from them on the process of making this film. So I don't know what their experience really was. I do know the girl who played Gorgeous went on to have a pretty, like, not overly successful career, but she was well known, or still is. I think she's in her 60s now.
Yeah.
And she's kind of like a cult favorite among nerds.
Yeah, that is interesting. Because I mean, I watched the same interview on the Criterion channel, and the director does sound like a great guy in the interviews based on, well, I mean, he's the one telling the story most of the time, so maybe that's why. But like his interactions with the crew sound just make him sound very nice and just treating crew members equally, no matter there was one story from it where the director lost a screw from his glasses, but since he had called the lighting crew members by name earlier in the day and they had never experienced that before, they spent a lot of time searching for this tiny screw on the floor of the soundstage, and then they gave it to him. And so, yeah, but yeah, I am also curious about like the girls' perspective. I was struck during this rewatch how they do seem to be pretty happy. Well, I mean, they're acting for the camera, of course, but like during the scene early on where I think it's like the first shot of the school, the girls are kind of lined up, and I think Melody has a guitar and they're all cheering. They just looked so happy in a way that well, I don't know, maybe it could be faked, but I was just gonna say they look happy in a way that can't be faked. But
so the only thing that I could find on it was that Obayashi didn't like their acting and struggled to get them to do anything when he was giving them verbal directions. So he ended up playing the soundtrack of the movie to help get them in the mood and the spirit of it. It also seems like the girls were very much helping each other, especially in regards to the nude scenes. So I think it was definitely like a camaraderie of all these girls together going through this together. But apparently he struggled to give them directions, probably
Yeah.
because none of them were actresses.
Yeah. I mean, I would be curious to hear their sides of it because I mean, it was the 70s. There weren't a lot of like, I mean, I don't really know filmmaking in Japan, but like there wasn't a lot of oversight on, especially when you're working with very young actresses, when there is nudity involved. But like just knowing how some of the American actresses were, especially in horror. I mean, notoriously, Stanley Kubrick's treatment of Shelley Duvall on the set of The Shining didn't really go great. So I would just be curious to hear their experience.
I'm also interested in looking into some of the movies that the cinematographer for this movie did afterwards. His name was Yoshitaka Sakamoto. And he's done a lot of work since then, and I don't think any of it was really with Obayashi, but I'm wondering what his influence was on this as well, because this is a movie that definitely does take a lot of really interesting things, and there was no storyboard from Obayashi. So there might have been input from other places that could have been interesting that I could have enjoyed, that I am curious to explore a little bit more about, like the crew, because it sounds like Obayashi like created a space of creativity when making this movie. Everyone felt pretty safe on the set. Everybody was having fun. So I would love to see what the rest of the crew went on to do.
Yeah. I did also want to mention, and in the girls kind of supporting each other, the actress who played the aunt was supportive of the one girl who had the full nude scene at the end, in that like she was so nervous to do that scene that she just got naked with her. And she was like, see, it's no big deal.
And then Obayashi included a topless scene for her. After seeing that, it was just like, looks great. Let's put it in there. Yeah, so again, thank you guys for watching this movie. I don't really have anything else to add. Did you want to add anything before we close the stream for the night?
Not necessarily. I guess I think Obayashi died a few years ago. But it kind of made
2020.
Okay, yeah, 5 years ago. But it kind of made me glad that he was able to be around long enough to see like the reappraisal of this movie. Like he was around for the Criterion re-release and things like that. So, but on the other hand, I don't know what else he made in terms of movies. So I definitely haven't seen anything else of his.
He definitely did make other movies.
He was mainly a director. He also edited this. He's the editor on this, and he edited a couple of other movies that he directed, but the last movie that he was everything on was Labyrinth of Cinema, which actually came out in 2019, and he made that movie while receiving cancer treatment. Wow. But actually, there is an interesting bump here where he suddenly was able to do a lot of the editing, directing, and a lot more writing after 2010. So I think House got a huge bump and he was able to get a lot more work. But other than that, it seems like a lot of what he does is directing.
Yeah. And I guess, yeah, one other thing I noticed just from looking at this poster here is that the cat does in a way resemble an atomic bomb blast, which is probably intentional. But
yeah.
But you really have to be looking for it to think of that when you're looking at this cat with this mouth.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct in that. That's an interesting observation.
Yeah, apart from that, I don't have anything else. But I do agree that I like this movie a lot. I am entertained by it. In terms of like, is this a bad movie or a good movie? I would say it's a good movie, even though it has the hallmarks of a bad movie, but it's so difficult to categorize. It sort of flips things on its head.
I would
So
call it like
yeah.
a horror satire.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think that's fair to say that it's a horror satire. This movie, it's not so bad it's good. It's just good, but not in the way that you're expecting it to be.
I don't think
Yeah.
it's for everyone, but
All right. Well, thank you guys so
fun.
much for joining me.
yeah,
And
thank you for making me watch this.
and I'm looking forward to whatever our next pick is going to be. And I'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.